Most ideas don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they're too similar to everything else. Whether it's AI, startups, or content, everything seems to be converging towards the same answers. The reason is that people like to copy each other, to optimize for the same center. So then everyone is focused on what everyone else is doing. And this is why markets get saturated, why we get content that feels identical, and why AI output sounds the same. If you're building, creating, or thinking, this directly affects your edge. But here's what most people miss. There is always valuable information outside of the center, in the gaps between the topics, in the connections that nobody else is making. And if you systematically find those gaps, you will no longer compete on execution, you will compete on insights. And this is exactly what I've been building. A system that can generate a network from any text or a conversation, map out the main topics, and show you what the gaps are between those topics, what are the unexplored connections, and then feed those gaps using the MCP server to your favorite LLM so that it focuses on these gaps and helps you develop your insights in a more original and interesting manner. Let me show you what it looks like. Here, I have a topic on startup ideas. So for example, if I ask my Claude to generate me a text on startup ideas, it's just going to give me some general information of how you approach building startups. And then when I ask it to give me gaps just by itself, without using the InfraNodus tool, it's going to give me some ideas that are sort of contradicting its own statements before, right? So it still focuses on the statements it made, and then it just starts to question itself and say, okay, well, you said this, but what about that other perspective, the opposite perspective? This is a nice way to challenge yourself, but it's not really focusing on the gaps here. If you tell it to use the InfraNodus MCP server, what happens in the background is that it visualizes this conversation as a knowledge graph, and then it detects gaps like the one you see here, for instance, between the two topics. One here is pattern recognition, another one is unique expertise, right? And then you can feed this gap into the built-in AI here so that it generates a question that will attempt to connect these topics together and then come up with an interesting insight based on that. So you're actually focusing on what's inside the text already, those topics, pattern recognition and unique expertise, but you're trying to bridge them in new ways. And this is exactly what this MCP server is doing. You see, when I ask it to use InfraNodus, it loads the generate content gap tools. It feeds that conversation that we had at the top to the tool, and then the tool provides a response with the list of the gaps, on the basis of which then Claude can provide an answer that really bridges those gaps or the blind spots that it had in a more original way, where it's not just contradicting itself or challenging itself by asking, well, what if it's otherwise, but rather looking, okay, what did I say and how I can connect it better? What did I miss inside? And here, if we talk about startups, for instance, there is an interesting gap that it recognized, both on the graph here and also in the chat that I had, on pattern recognition and unique expertise. You see here we have pattern recognition and unique expertise. They're both in the text, but they're not really connecting. And then if we think of the connection, then we can think, okay, in the context of startups, it's probably having to do something with what we as executors have unique expertise on and how we can see in the outside world some patterns where people are experiencing some problems or where the workflows are too tedious or long or they experience a lot of pains, how we can apply this expertise to those particular patterns, right? So this is not something that it provided as a question here in the first iteration. Here it was just more talking about, let's say, survivorship bias, timing is underweighted, that it's important to be on time, market fit, it's all some kind of generic ideas that would be obvious if you read this first introduction on what startup ideas are about. But here it's actually focusing on something that is very crucial. How do you find the ways to apply your unique expertise in whatever it is that you're building to some patterns that you see in the outside world where your expertise would actually be needed? And this is where you would also get a competitive edge. And just to show you how it works visually, I take this gap and then inside InfraNodus, it generates a research question, and then it answers this question by basically saying that when you keep encountering the same friction, that's a signal. If solving it requires tedious work, deep domain understanding, or building a hard-to-copy data set, that friction can become unique expertise and eventually a mode. So basically, focusing on what you really know how to do well and finding how you can apply this to something in the world that people are having problems with. This is a really good idea. In fact, you can sort of extract it from this first introduction, but it's nice that it makes it so clear and precise and really tries to bridge this gap between the two different topics. So if you're ideating or you're thinking about something, this is a really good approach that you can take. And you can also use this on your existing conversations, on texts, on research articles, on your own notes, on anything else. I have a lot of videos on the channel where I explain how to do content gap detection, both using the graph and also using the MCP server inside Claude or your favorite LLM like ChatGPT, for instance. What's really nice here, another thing that you can do is to actually ask InfraNodus to analyze search results on a certain topic and generate a graph for you and then find the gaps inside, which is really good if you're trying to understand what the market is talking about and what they're missing. So if I tell it, okay, try to analyze Google search results on startup ideas and find gaps inside. So what it's going to do is that it's going to launch a search tool inside based on the InfraNodus MCP server, which is connected here. I can show you in the end of the video how you connect the server, so you can also do the same. But you see here it's launching this tool. It's sending the request, startup ideas, best startup ideas, how to find startup ideas. And then InfraNodus provides a response with the search results and also with the structural gaps inside already, as you can see here. And then basically Claude has access to this really nice information and to other InfraNodus tools. So now it's also comparing search queries to search results to see what people are searching for, but they don't find yet. So this is another gap that it's focusing on. And then the response that it's going to give me is going to be much more precise, because suddenly we are actually basing our insights on what is actually happening in the world around us, what people search for, what they find, what they're missing, what people are writing about, and what are the gaps in the public discourse as well. So you see, it's pretty interesting here, and it provides us really nice insights on what gaps we can address in this market. So if we were making content about startup ideas, or if we were actually even working ourselves on a startup, that would help us see how we can think further than anyone else. And just to demonstrate to you what happens visually, you know, here what we're having is that if we go to the apps page, we basically do a search on startup ideas here, right? And then we choose the Google search results page. So this is exactly what's happening under the hood. And then once we make a visualization, it represents it as a graph. And then it has an understanding of the main topics here that, for example, if you talk about startup ideas, it's important to speak about market validation, AI development, founder platform, business engines, and so on. But then it specifically focuses on the content gaps. You see the topics which are not well connected, and then it generates unique insights based on that. So that's what's happening under the hood, and why it's so powerful, because you're basing yourself on what's already happening in the discourse, but you're just trying to make new connections that most of the other people are not making. And this is where you will have your unique insights. One other approach how you can apply it is if you're writing articles or doing search engine optimization. I'm going to show you how I do this in Claude. So I have this Claude code here, and I'm actually creating an article about MCP servers and AI agents for my own website. So what I did, I gave it access to the repository with all the marketing content, all the landing pages. And then I basically asked it to write me a new article on a certain topic that I identified as something that could be interesting for the readers. And then I'm, of course, going to read it and to rewrite it to just give it my own style. But what I do here is at some point when it wrote this article, I'm saying to it, okay, now I want you to find the gaps inside and to generate some interesting content ideas based on those gaps. So instead of just writing what everyone else is writing about this topic, that also gives me unique advantage, because I can suddenly generate content based on those gaps and talk about the stuff that no one else is talking about. And if you know, Google actually likes this kind of content. They even have the concept of informational gain, and that's exactly what this thing is doing. You know, it's identifying the gaps, and then it finds how you can bridge those gaps. So when you have information that bridges these gaps, Google will think that your content has high informational gain, because it's talking about the topics that everyone else is talking about, like you see here. You know, you're covering the whole discourse, but you're also making connections that no one else is making. And this is what brings higher informational gain to your content. It makes it more interesting for your readers because they will not find it anywhere else. And therefore, it's going to be much more interesting and it will be pushed higher in the search results. I applied it to many articles that I write, and not only it's better for Google search results, but it's just also much more pleasurable to write in a way where you're actually adding something interesting to the discourse. So I think it has lots of positive aspects. I hope you find this demonstration interesting. Let me just quickly show you how you install the server if you don't know it yet. If you're using Claude, where it actually works the best, you can go to Customize here, and then you go to Connectors, and you basically click a plus, and then you can add a custom connector, and this is where you add the MCP server. So you can write here InfraNodus, and then the link to our MCP server. I'm going to also leave it in the description to the video below. And basically then it will ask you to authorize, and then it will connect it to your system with your API key. And if you're using Claude, it's the same thing. You go to Customize and then to Connectors, and then you just add this MCP server as a connector here. You can also edit the settings file of Claude because that's on your local computer, and add it through just providing a link. So if the first way doesn't work, then you can also add it in this different way where you just added the settings. I will link to the page where I explain how to do that in the description to the video below as well, so you can see how it works. And if you use ChatGPT, it's also pretty easy. You just need to add a custom app, give it permissions to run in developer mode, and then you can use external MCP server this way. So, all right, I hope you find that interesting. Let me know what you think about it. If you already tried using the InfraNodus MCP server for finding content gaps, what your experience is, and if you find it helpful. Thank you.